let me show you how to create your color settings here in Photoshop and then go into Bridge to share those settings. This part is fairly simple and fairly easy. So let's do this here. So first off, you're going to go to your edit menu, and under edit, you're going to go down to where it says color settings. When you get here to color settings, it's going to open up this dialog box here. That's going to let you set this up. Now, this is the ideal situation. Ideal situation is that you and everybody that's working with you, you all have the same laptop brand, the same laptop type, same computer type, or if you can connect your computer to a monitor, you're all using the same brand monitor. That is never going to be the case, but let's just say that it is. That means that the RGB choice that you make here under working spaces, the CMYK choice you make under working spaces is all going to be the same for everybody. That is never going to be the case. So here's what happens. Every electronic device has a color profile. When you plug your computer up, the monitor that is connected to your computer, it has a color profile. If you go to the manufacturer of that monitor, you can go and download the driver for that particular monitor. So for instance, I got a Dell monitor in front of me here. So if I go to Dell website and go to their support section where I can download the different drivers. The driver is basically the little program that tells this computer how tells my computer how this particular monitor is supposed to work. You know, it's about as far as how the colors are supposed to display and things like that, right? So you can go here, you can find that driver, scan hardware, see if this actually does anything. It's probably not going to work too easily, but you can have it scan the hard, like for Dell, you could do the scan hardware, or if you know the exact driver you need to get, you can probably go and, download and install that driver or update the existing drivers and that sort of thing for what you need. And then that's going to accurately display your colors based on that computer and based on the computer you got and the monitor that you have. Now, if you're able to do that, what will happen is that when you hit this drop down for RGB under working spaces, somewhere in this list is going to be the name of your monitor. And for my particular case, that is this, I just saw it, this KW right here, this KW272U. You're probably not going to have this because that's just the designation for this particular monitor that I got in front of me. So that's what I would choose as the representation of red, green, and blue light value to my projects. So when I'm using Photoshop, when I open up a file in Photoshop that's in RGB color mode, it's going to display the colors based on this color profile, right? Because that's my working space. CMYK, it would be the same thing for that, but it would be for my printer. So I would go and find the printer driver, install that printer driver. Once I have it installed, the name of this printer would probably show up if I have that printer there. Now, let's say you don't do that or you can't do that. If I don't have the particular monitor driver installed, well, that's what all the rest of these things are here for. These other profiles are profiles for RGB, different types of monitors, different types of television screens, or just some generic profile that kind of covers every electronic RGB device that may be out there that can accept that profile. So you'll have a list. Some of these you will not know what they are because you don't deal with that. Some of them will make sense. Like, for instance, HD TV, high definition TV. Are you using a television as your monitor? You can. Then you can pick HD TV if you want to. Those of you, you got 4K up here. So that's a 4K monitor. You have, it should still be here. Those of you who work in video that has done anything with video editing, you'll probably recognize PAL CCAM. And NTSC is in here as well, too, somewhere. I just don't see it right now without looking at every one of these things. But there's NTSC and PAL in here, which was the old video outputs for television, that existed before HD TV and stuff came around. So you have different ones. And then all the way up here at the top, at the very top here, you have sRGB, which is the default choice out the box for Photoshop. You have this Pro Photo, Image P3, Color Match, Apple, and then Adobe RGB. What are those? Those are generic profiles that work for almost every monitor out here in the world. That is a very wide range of the RGB color spectrum. That's just throwing as much to that monitor as it can, all 16 million colors as much as it can, and that monitor is just going to display what it can display. sRGB, like I said, is a default. If you were doing a web design project, a PowerPoint project, something that was going to be showing on screen only, and you really didn't care how well the color was represented, you can use sRGB because that is the very most generic thing that's out there. I personally hate it like the plague because it is not accurate. And I deal with a lot of color correction and photo retouching, so I have to be as accurate as I possibly can. So with that, I always opted for the Adobe RGB. Now, Adobe RGB was made back in 1988, 98, 88. Yeah, 88. It is old. I'm older, so that kind of ages me. But back in those days in 1988, when this was originally made, this was created for those CRT, cathode ray tubes, monitors. It's the big, huge monitors that took up almost your entire desk with the size of that thing. But the accuracy of the color was a lot better in some arguments than what we have now with our current monitors. At least the LCD monitors that started coming out prior to. So this Adobe RGB was created back then. Is that 88 or 98? My eyes are terrible. 98. So this was made back then to represent the color in those particular type of monitors. And it was holding steady for a long time. I used to swear by this Adobe RGB for a long, long time. And then Adobe came out with this Pro Photo RGB, which is kind of the updated version of this Adobe RGB. Now, is one better than another? You can argue that forever and about which one is better, more accurate, and that sort of thing. You know, some people will argue that color match or this image P3 is better than any of the other ones. And here's my opinion. Adobe RGB is what I started with. It worked great. It was beautiful. Pro Photo is just as good now. Some cases better depending on the type of screen, especially if you have one of these higher end screens, monitors. If you got the one that comes from Walmart, like the what is that, the On Pro or whatever it's called, it may not be a good quality monitor. So whatever you choose will probably work, but it's probably not the best output. But if you go out and pay money for a good Acer or ViewSonic or Barco or Lacey monitor or one of those 4K gaming monitors that really is very high quality with the color, you probably want to opt in for the Pro Photo RGB, or the actual brand monitor that would be listed with their driver, that's going to be a lot better, like I got with this KW one here, because you get the best representation. Print wise, CMYK. I don't have a printer installed on this. I did that on purpose, so I got a lot of these generic outputs. For CMYK, it's very important to know what you're printing on. Am I printing on paper? Okay. Well, that covers for most of these, but now am I here in the US or am I in Japan or am I in Europe? So you got different ones that will cover for those. And then am I printing on newsprint, like for a newspaper? Am I printing on something a little bit better than newsprint? So it's a little bit thicker paper than newsprint. So am I doing coated paper or uncoated paper? That's what the coated and uncoated is that you see listed here. Am I doing sheet fed printing, meaning one big sheet at a time or one regular sheet at a time, like an inkjet printer or a laser printer or those bigger printers that print out commercial level books and magazines? Or am I doing the web offset printing, meaning that I'm printing on, for mass print magazines or newspapers where they're offset printing. So they're printing one color at a time instead of all the colors at once. You got to find these things out. A lot of times when you're dealing with print-based work, excuse me, sorry about that. When you're dealing with print-based work, you are talking with someone who is doing the production, in the production house that's actually printing the final, product. You will talk to them. they will tell you, hey, pick this profile over that profile. You can ask them why. They may tell you why, but pretty much pick US sheet fed coated because that's the one that we're using here in the shop, where we're printing everything out. Or use the US uncoated, use this uncoated foie gras, 29. Don't worry about why, just use it because that's the one that we're using. So anything that you have in CMYK now is represented by the colors of that device. Pick and choose on your own, or pick what you know is the thing that works based on who you talk to. The other working spaces here, you could pretty much leave alone because by standards, they don't mean much anymore. Gray and spot. Gray is black and white, so black and white images. Spot is for spot colors. So this would be Pantone colors. Pantone is a chemical company that makes ink pigments, specialized ink pigments for your branding or for that consistent color throughout what you're doing. So going back to the Coca-Cola talk, Coca-Cola spends thousands and millions of dollars every year paying Pantone to make their red, their black, their white, the green, all the colors of all their products. So they were the exclusive user of that particular color. So Coca-Cola Red, exclusively owned by Coca-Cola Company, and they've paid Pantone to make that color. Nobody else can use it. That sort of thing. Now, they are using what is called the dot gain percentage. Now, what is that? When a drop of ink hits a piece of paper, it's going to spread by a controlled amount percentage. That's a dot gain percentage. The traditional amount is at 20%. So usually you're leaving it at that and leaving it alone. That's the default that shows up. So that's cool. If you go with a higher percentage number, you're going to get darker because now that drop of ink is going to spread more. So it's going to start bleeding into the other ink drops that hit that paper. So sometimes you're going to, like in the case of gray, you'll get a darker black and white picture printed out. If you go to a lighter color, if you go to a lower number, then you're going to get lighter colors because that dot of ink is not going to spread as much. So you're going to get a lighter color because now that drop of ink along with the color of the paper is going to now determine that black and white picture, what it's going to look like. This only works for print. It does not work for anything on screen with these dot gain percentages. This is why it's kind of one of those things that doesn't matter anymore because everything's going towards the digital world on your phones, on your tablets, on your screens more than being printed. That's just the way the world is going now. Now, you set up these color management policy, this working space. And then once you get this working space, this color management policy here is asking you what happens if you open a file that doesn't match what you set up here at the top. So if there's something up here that I did not set, that don't match, and when I open the file, what happens? You can choose these options here, preserving or converting and that sort of thing. But honestly, the thing that you should do is check on these options here that say ask when opening and pasting on your own system. So that way, when you open a file that doesn't match the working space that you've set up, it'll ask you, a message will pop up. Hey, this document you opened is not US web coded with that profile added onto it. What do you want to do? Do you want to change it to your profile? Do you want to keep it to the profile that's already there? Or do you want to turn the profiles completely off? You'll never turn it off. But the first two choices, converting to your color profile is probably going to be the best choice because you're the one working on the document, on the image. Or keep it to the profile that's already there because maybe you're not the one working on the file. You're just looking at the file to make sure that's the one that's going to be needed. And you're going to pass it over to somebody else. So that person over there, that somebody else will be the one that changes the profile up. So you would leave it alone. But you want to make sure you check on these ask when opening and ask when pasting options, just so you can get that message to pop in. Now, the rest of this, I always say this when I'm teaching this in a class, the rest of this conversion options and that sort of thing, it's over here. The default is fine. It should be set up the way that I'm looking at it right now, where the color engine is Adobe. There's other choices. The other choices are not as good, so don't use them. The rendering intent option here should be set to relative colorimetric. What is this? This is essentially the different output types when converting from RGB to CMYK or vice versa. Give you an example. If I start off with green in RGB, Relative color metric would keep it to that same value of green when I convert from RGB to CMYK. So this way it tries to keep it to that same color of green, even though it may have to change the numbers. Absolute color metric only goes by the numbers. So if this value of green that I started with in RGB, when I convert to CMYK, if it doesn't match and it changes, and by the numbers that changes to orange or yellow or blue, so be it. It doesn't try to keep it to that same value of green. Saturation and perceptual are just other versions of this absolute and relative color metric, where saturation is more like absolute color metric. It'll change the color up and keep the numbers to be equal, versus perceptual, it'll change the numbers and make the color stay, the color that you're seeing stay in. So that green will stay green. Relative color metric is the default. Relative color metric is pretty much what everyone uses. You may run into a situation where somebody will tell you to change it to what they want it to be, and they'll tell you why if it's important. Same thing with the rest of these options here: the black point compensation, the dither, turning on the blend text and colors using a gamma value. None of these things have to be changed unless someone tells you that it needs to change, and usually they'll give you the reason why. Now, you go in here to color settings. You set this up here in Photoshop. First time out the box, getting Photoshop ready to get started, you do this. And once you get this done, you're going to hit the save button here. Now, when you hit save, the whole idea and purpose of hitting save is to save this into a folder called settings that's part of your operating system that will share these settings with the other programs in your Adobe group, your Adobe programs. So that way you set this up, this color profile will now be shared with Illustrator and InDesign and the rest of them. And it's saving it for yourself. So that way when Photoshop updates, this color profile will update along with it. So that way you'll always have that profile. Now I've already saved this one time before. So I'm just going to replace what I already had in there. When you end up saving it, you can give it a particular name if you want to. It doesn't really matter, with a little comment and that sort of thing. You would hit OK to get out of that little window, and that saves it. Now, once it's saved, you have that profile now sitting up here at the top, along with all the other generic profiles that are available to you to use that would work, each and every time. You're finished with this. Now you're going to hit OK to get out of this color settings, because that part's done. So now Photoshop is done. File has been saved. Your color settings have been saved. Now every file that you open up will be based on that color setting. Here's some extra things. Under File, you're going to click on Browse and Bridge. Next. So after you save the color settings, you're going to do the Browse and Bridge. Now, what is this going to do? This opens up that bridge program that we were using to do the metadata stuff that I was showing you in the last lesson. Here's one of the other things that Bridge does for you is you can go now, once Bridge finishes opening up, which it's not, there we go. You can go to your edit menu, go down to color settings here in Bridge. And what you're going to see is a list of all of your color settings. You may have to check on this option where it says show expanded list of color settings, but you should find, if you scroll through, your color settings that you created. So here's mine with my initials on it. And then you'll hit the apply button. And what that does is that it synchronizes Photoshop's color settings with the other programs in your operating system, within Adobe's family, any other programs in your operating system that uses the color profiles, they'll all now share and synchronize together. All right. So that way you have the same color profile across the board. So that's the purpose of it. So that's the only thing you do inside a Bridge when it comes to colors, is set that up accordingly. And when you're done with that, you quit out of Bridge because you're done with that program. And we're back over here to Photoshop. Now, last 5 minutes here. Creating color. In the first class, we talked about making a new document. And in the process of making a new document, we talked about this little color square here that when you click on it, it allows you to create, color through this color picker. So this is the way that you would end up creating colors majority of the time. Now, the thing that I didn't talk about with this color picker is when you have a project or you're just trying to create colors and you want to keep using those colors again and again. You want to save those colors. So every time you open up this color picker, there's a button here that says add to swatches. Before you hit this button though, figure out which way that you're going to save the color, like how you're going to name it. Because when you click on this add to swatches button, it gives you the ability to add the color by giving it a name. All right. And you can come up with whatever name you want. That's not the good practice. Best practice is to figure out which way you want to name the color, by the RGB numbers, by the CMYK numbers, by the hex number, the lab, the HSB. So you got all those options here. I would go for the hex number. I would highlight that hexadecimal number right here next to the pound sign, right click on that and copy those numbers. All right, so that way when I hit add to swatches, I can just create the pound sign and then paste those colors right next to that pound sign. This way I don't have to remember what the numbers are and type them in and that sort of thing, what the values are. They'll just come in like that. That way I add it like that. Now, if you want to, you can also add the colors to a library, so if you have a library already created, you can add them into it, because when you check that on, it'll pick up that you already got library, and then you can add them to your library. But if you don't want to, you don't have to do that from right here. You could do that later. Once you hit OK, it'll add the color, to the swatches panel for this file that you're about to create in this particular case. Or if you already have a file open, it'll add it to the swatches panel of the file you already got. So let me show it to you through here. If I create a document, any file that you have, again, you have the color picker that you can activate by clicking on the foreground or background color squares over here. And same procedure. You would have the color, like say this particular red. I would highlight and copy this color, hit add to swatches, do my pound sign, and then paste that color in with the pound sign in front of it. So that way that color is added to my swatches, anytime I need to add the color in. When I go to window and look for my swatches panel, in my swatches panel that comes up, let me just grab it and pull it here to the center. I have all of these colors here. And if I scroll down, see, I got the colors listed right there. When I hover over the colors that I added, see, this is the purple that I added. This is the red I added. And when I hover over it, see, it shows me the little tooltip that tells me what that color is. Also across the top up here, it'll show you the last colors that you used. And you can click onto those colors up top there, and it'll kind of swap around to the last color you use kind of thing. But it doesn't show you what that color is. It just shows it to you down here. And you got other colors that, that you may have created come here by default, with the color, with the file that you created or whatever. You got your default colors listed out. So you got colors already here that you can pick and choose from as well in your swatch panel. But it just gives you the ability to make colors through that color, from the color picker. Another way to create colors. You go under window, you go down and choose color. It opens up this panel, which allows you to create colors. You will see this in other programs. Some programs you can expand it out like I'm doing here, and some of them you're not able to. But you will have these sliders, where you can slide left and right to pick up and create different colors. And you'll have like this little, I'll open this up kind of wide, this rainbow of colors here. This is all the 16 million colors that you can click and drag to slide across to pick a color, or you can click at a different spot and you'll see the numbers kind of jump around to be based on whatever you click at. That's the color you got. You got the lighter versions of the color, the tints across the top, the darker colors, the shades across the bottom, and going left and right, you get your different colors and their different values and their different hues. You also have another version of this color palette that you can look at, depending on how you like to see these. You have what is called the palette options button. So up in the top right-hand corner of all these panels, little 3-dot hamburger there, you got your different ways in which you could see your different colors. So you have your different sliders, HSB, RGB, CMYK, grayscale, which will just give you one slider for the K value, which is black. You know, so you get your different shades of gray. But then you also have like hue cube, which pulls from your color picker. So if I go to the color picker here, sorry about that. If I go to the color picker here, I get my different values of colors and a little slider. It's the same thing here, where it's like your color picker is just, well, let me cancel to get out of this, where your color picker kind of comes up and down through here. And my time is almost up. Sorry about that. I got my different timers that went off there. So you have your hue slider that you can use through here to pick and choose the color similar to what you got in the color picker. So I think that's kind of neat. You have the color wheel. You have an actual color wheel. That's another one that's some people like, where you can pick your color around, you know, the color wheel, and you can get different values, you know, towards that particular color. You know, you can go to your different hue slider, you know, to choose the color down through there, as well with a saturation value and even a brightness value as little sliders. You know, so that way you can use this to kind of, let's generate this color here, and then, you know, get a different saturation or brightness level, you know, that I could pick from that color cube. And it allows it and makes it kind of a neat thing. And then if you want to add that color to your swatch panel, through the swatches panel, when you use and create the color, at the bottom of the swatches panel, there's a little button that looks like a little plus sign inside of a box. That's your universal new button. That's what I call it. Depending on the panel that you're in, you'll see that button show up, you know, at the bottom of every little palette or panel that you may have. And it allows you to create something new, depending on the palette that it's in, depends on what it's creating. So in this case, creates a new color. And again, it creates the color and then you got to name it. So how do you name it? I would name it by the way that I mixed it. So I'm looking at HSB numbers here for this color. So I would put in H50 space S. What is that color? What is that? 49. And if you want to do 49%, because it's actually 49%, but I just do S49 and then B, what is that? 83. My eyesight is getting, I don't have my glasses today, so my eyesight is bad. But that's the way I would name that color. So this way, when I hit OK, that color is added to the swatches of colors, and it got added in the grayscale. Why did it do that? I guess it was because I had it open. It should have been added down here at the bottom along with the rest of these colors. But it got, I guess I had the grayscale group of circles, squares there selected at the time. So now I can't move it out of there. Well, that's terrible. I can do it again, but I don't know why it did that. Yeah, I had that. I guess I had that folder selected. I guess that's always been that way, and I just never noticed it. I had that folder of colors selected, so that's why I added it to there. But I couldn't pull it down here. Usually you can just drag a color from one square to another, from one group to another, but it wasn't letting me do that. Like usually you can grab it and like I can drag it here to the CMYK, so it pulls it out of grayscale, and now it's added over here to CMYK, you know, in order. See, there it is there. And usually I can drag it down here to the rest of them, but it wouldn't do it. I don't know why it wouldn't do it. I'm not worried about it. ASE, remember those ASE colors, Adobe Swatch Exchange? Let's talk about those real fast. And then I'll be done with this because I can keep going forever and ever. But the palette options button for your swatches panel, you will have an import command that you can use. And what import allows you to do, it allows you to go and find those ASE files. So the one that I pulled, and you have a couple of these in your folder that you're downloading in the class files, where you have different colors. And I'm just showing you an example here where you can download the ASE file, and then you can open it up within your program. And then those colors are sitting there as one of the folders now. So now you have those. Now I got those colors that I had from before that I downloaded, pull in here. So that way I can use it in the project for this file. Okay. Yeah, so that's it. So you could take a bunch of colors, create them, different ways you can create them. You can create them in the program, but you can also create them outside of the program in a website. You have a bunch of different color theory concepts that you can go and pull from to create those colors, and then ultimately bring those colors into the program to start using. Once you have those colors available, these are already inside of folders, but there's a little folder icon down here where you can create a folder of your own. And you can create your own folder group with whatever name you want to give it. And then you can create your colors inside of there for your own particular project. And then those colors, once you have them created, you can export those swatches for exchange just with a simple right click on the folder. And it'll become its own ASE file that you can export out and be able to give to somebody else for them to import it, as they need to. So that way you could share these colors. I did talk about the libraries. We'll talk about the libraries in another way in another lecture. So that way you'll get to them and see those. But libraries is another panel that would have those colors. Close that up. That could have the libraries that you've made, and you can have those colors inside of there that you could pull down. It just has to load them. So it may take a little bit of time depending on your internet connection, but you'll have those colors that you could pull in and add those colors to your, swatch panel. Apply color. Well, no, not apply. Why am I not able? Oh, that's what it is. Here in Photoshop, it's just click onto the square. That adds it. Or I think it's click onto the name. Does that add the folder? No, that doesn't add the folder. Oh, it does add the folder. It just adds it to the top instead of at the bottom. That's weird. But like some programs, you click on the color, it adds that one single color. You click on the name, it adds that one color group. That is not the color. Because it's adding it, but I don't know where it's adding it. Adding that color to. I am confused at the moment. And I'm not going to worry about it because it's going to drive me crazy until I figure it out. And once I figure it out, then it'll be like after this video is over. But in any case, you can add the colors to your project, one color at a time or a whole group at a time if you want to through the library. I'm just drawing a blank about where it's at because it's adding it to the swatch panel, but I don't see where besides up here where it's adding it one color at a time. And I don't see what I'm doing wrong, but I'm not worried about it anymore right now. All right, so because I don't want to make this any longer than it is. This is what we're going to be doing as far as the live class. It is going to be this. I think I've shown you everything that you need for this particular lecture series, this particular series in the lecture. Yeah, I think that's all. When you get into the assessment, when you do the assessment, it's going to ask you a series of questions as you've done with the previous lectures there. When you finish with that assessment and you score over an 80%, then lecture 4 will be available. Lecture 4, we're going to start getting into Photoshop and talking about the different brush tools that are available, creating colors that we're going to use with those brush tools, and start painting on things with different colors. And we're going to talk about things like blending modes and opacities and other options you have with your different brushes. So I will see everybody in that next class. Again, if you guys have questions about anything, we have open lab on Friday from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's going to be in room C24. Make sure you come on those Fridays to ask any questions, to cover anything that you have with the quiz, with the previous lab, anything like that. When it comes to a lab assignment, get the labs done. You can come on that Friday to kind of get the labs done if you don't have any other way in which to do it. If you don't have your Creative Cloud account by now, you should be getting that because you're needed for class. Make sure you do that. If you don't have it, come to the lab and we can make some type of arrangement for you to be able to work as you need to. Make sure you bring your flash drive with you so that way you can get your work done and put it on that flash drive. Thank y'all for being here, and I will talk to you in the next class.